fastest public hearings I've ever been through. Okay, we're gonna move on to old business, discussion of future Minnesota DOT improvements at Trunk Highway 27. Would that be you, Greg?
That'd be me. Bear with me right here. I've got a number of options. If you remember a while back ago, we kind of talked about 27 options that we were looking at, or issues that we were looking at there. Very difficult to read. Yes.
Turn one on. But that makes it worse. Okay.
Well, what we're looking at here, on this first option up on top, this is the existing roadway. We've got our concrete walk, then we've got the parking on both sides. You've got the through lane, and then you've got your common left turn lane. One of the things that was kind of a consideration that we wanted to look at was obviously the bike lane that would potentially come through town is kind of listed as the Camper Pedestrians Trail coming across the bridge and going north. But then parking was an issue that we wanted to look at. We're still looking at parallel parking here. But in order to get the bike lane in, we actually ended up taking out the common left turn lane. And one thing you'll notice here, these are both going in one direction. Simply because if you look at the lane widths, I don't like going down to 11 feet. It's a little bit narrower than what we currently have on our roads. Generally 12 is what we have for a turn or for a through lane, but because they're both going in the same direction, it's not as bad, you know, because you're not going to have it going like this. You're going to be right next to each other. So if you have oversized roads or something like that, you know, arguably they could take up both of the lanes and still make their way through, as opposed to clipping somebody's mirror. So we've got option number one here, and these are all very preliminary and still draft by every stretch of the imagination. We have not put them in front of MnDOT as of yet. We still have to coordinate with them in terms of that. What I wanted to do tonight, show you some of the layouts that we were looking at, and then ask to have or invite the business owners in to kind of give their input on what they would like to see downtown and some of their concerns for that area. So that's what we're looking at.
So this would make it a one-way?
This would make it a one-way, yes.
And that's a bump out in that one corner.
And that's a bump out right here, basically to increase the safety for the pedestrians crossing that area.
Yeah.
Right now, there's about 13,000 vehicles that go through Broadway. Obviously, by having a one-way, split that to 6,500.
Okay, where does the other one-way go? I guess that's
the other one. We'd be looking at basically First Avenue South. Is where we'd have tentatively the other one-way of it. Now, again, I don't know what MnDOT's feeling is on that. We have to do some geometric layouts. But right now, we're focusing on kind of the downtown area in terms of parking, railroad one, but bump outs, bike lanes. That was all of the things that we were kind of looking at. This kind of fit the bill for that type of scenario.
okay.
Looking at some other options, again, we've got, I think, 5 of them up in through here. The second option here, again, we've got the one-way, but to try to increase the number of parking stalls downtown, because parking is an issue, we went with parallel parking through here. In order to do that, you'll notice we only have the one through lane. That's because we need a ingress-egress lane, which in this case we have at 16 feet just because of the width that we have. It's kind of the remainder of it, if you will. So that takes up one of those lanes. Again, we added the bump out here for the pedestrian accesses. Now they only have 13.5 feet to cross, which does make it safer, but we're going to have 6,500 vehicles on one lane, which is a concern. But if we've got the parking, I don't know how the business owners are going to feel about that.
How much parking does this scenario increase?
It's got a double.
I don't have a hard number for you. I don't. It increases it, obviously, I mean, you can see just here versus what we had on option number one.
Okay, well,
Or even the existing, I mean, you can look at either one of those two. Generally, you get about, I think it was, 15 spots if they park correctly, for parallel parking. Yeah, if you park correctly.
Like 11.
Handicap one of those blocks that might block everybody
Plus
else.
when you turn right.
So, looking at this one, we got 29 parallel spots on there, so
you almost tripled it.
almost doubled it, almost tripled it, yeah. But you take away the north side, parking over there, so
No.
not quite. So you're down to one lane here. You do have, you'll notice this is just one bike lane. You do have bike lane in the one direction, so First Avenue South is going to be the other direction of it as well. So looking at option number 3 that we've got here, again, we still have the wider lane, which is at 13.5 feet, but we reduced the sidewalks a little bit. Up here we had 11.7. We're dropping it back down to 8.7. The existing sidewalk is 8 feet plus or minus, so it's still a little wider than our existing, but we have that second bike lane, so now eastbound and westbound would be continue on Broadway for the bike lane. Now, how's it work? It's interesting. We've been asked by some individuals to look at back-end parking for diagonal parking. There is evidence shown that when you back into the parking stalls, it's a little bit safer because you know what you're backing into ahead of time as opposed to backing out. Because sometimes you don't always look to see what's behind you when you back out. I'm not necessarily convinced yet that backing parking is the way to go, but it's an option that we have up there, just because I think it's new in the area. I don't think people necessarily know how to use that. I think they're going to try to turn it
Wide swinging.
wide swinging.
There's gonna be a big learning curve for that.
And that's my fear there, is that they're either going to try to come down this way and pull in, or they're going to have a big swinging curve to try to get in that direction. So it's something we looked at, but I don't think it's one that is necessarily going to make it through to.
I know if it was my daughter, she needs about 3 of them spots.
Wow.
She just,
You got backup cameras coming now.
Hey.
We do have backup cameras now,
she
yes.
just clipped one of my other cars, and she had a whole wide place to go.
Looking at the 5th option, very similar to what we have now. We've got the common left turn, we've got a through lane. We've got the 9-foot parking, which we shrunk up from the existing, which is 13 feet. And basically gave that distance to the bike lane. So we took a foot from the through lane, we took 4 feet from the parking lane and gave it to the bike lane. So it's similar to what we've got on First Street here, and bike lanes. But we've narrowed this down to 9 feet. 9 feet still is acceptable in terms of a parking lane, especially considering you have the bike lane adjacent to it. But it narrowed up these lanes to 11 feet, which I don't necessarily quite like just yet. But those are the options that we kind of developed and would ultimately show to the public once we get that. So
This would probably be the least disruptive of
this would be the least disruptive, no doubt. It's just a matter of grinding off the paint and putting paint back down in this location.
What's gonna make it a little more dangerous is, opening up car doors and a bicyclist, because, you have less area, and the
Yep.
doors are gonna sweep right out there.
But has there been a whole bunch more accidents and things, like you said, it's already going north and south, right? Or it's
On
south?
First Street, correct. This is
First Street.
similar to what we've got on First Street. We haven't had any accidents to my knowledge on First Street. And I think in terms of the automobile, somebody opening up their car door on Broadway here, I know I do, whenever I open up the car door, I look in the mirror to see what's coming beforehand. I mean, we've got a lot of vehicles traveling on Broadway, so it's to your best interest to see what's coming before you swing it open, because a bike may not hurt, but a vehicle is definitely gonna hurt a lot. If you're pulled over too far and you swing it up too much, it's gonna rip it off. So,
Why they, the bike street, or bike is up and down First Street,
yes,
correct? So why don't we run the bikes up and down First Avenue, north and south? Why can't we take the bikes across that way to the bridge?
we can, what I
There's
was,
really no, if we're looking at redoing 27, we take that 10 lanes out there, we ain't compacting down.
what I was looking at doing, because MinDOT's coming through here to basically do some work on 27 in the upcoming years, to take advantage of that, to try to get additional parking, bike lane, that type of stuff, incorporated into all of that work, and minimize the areas that we're looking at in terms of construction for it. So that was the intent.
So if we need more parking, could we just, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the one-way, but could we keep like an option 5, and then, for example, the Domino's Pizza Road? Could we make that a one-way and then do parking diagonally? Would that increase parking? Could we do that with some of the side roads,
Some of the side streets.
some of the side streets? I
Okay,
don't know.
yeah. And that's some of the stuff that I'd like to get out of that discussion with the general public. What are your concerns? And basically have them put dots on a piece of paper. Parking is our biggest concern.
Right.
Railroads are our biggest concern. Bike lanes are our biggest concern. So that we can kind of have an idea of what are their main concerns, and then go from there and develop something to achieve that.
Now, with the one-way option, do you have a picture of where the one lanes would go? Which roads would become one lane? Or haven't you, I mean?
Broadway obviously would, and tentatively, we're looking at First Avenue South over to Fourth Street and then back up. So it would essentially split around the downtown area and then come back at Fourth Street.
Split like at the post office?
Just after the bridge,
Down to dam.
down the dam.
Oh, by the dam, okay, down there, okay.
Which would leave a little bit more room for between the dam and the road. It is pretty close right now. So we'd have some green space in there that you'd be able to have as a park area, parking and such, and then come back.
You'd have to change the curve up there.
No doubt, no doubt.
And
And then it would go past the courthouse?
that'd be dropping down, so the one-way would be going down. Okay, so you wouldn't have to put a whole lot of fill in there to raise that up. I mean, it would be nice to raise it up a bit.
We'd have to put some fill in there to raise it up, because if you're gonna be using that as a highway area,
Yeah.
there's only certain grades that an 18-wheeler, for instance, would be able to traverse going down that and then back up. So we would have to put some fill in there to bring that up.
Well, even an 18-wheeler to turn that corner now would be,
Now you wouldn't have it. It wouldn't
no,
work.
so there'd have to be a lot of reconstruction right there.
We would, yes.
Park, most of our park, disappeared.
That is true. But I wanted to at least get the business owners in here and give us their thoughts, because we need their input and their buy-in, so to speak, on what they're looking for. Because if we do, anything in terms of diagonal parking, bump outs, there's obviously going to be a cost associated with that, for one, so then we'll be looking to the business owners if they're willing to help offset some of that cost in terms of assessments. And then I can pretty much guarantee you, I haven't had a conversation with MinDOT, but MinDOT is likely not going to want to plow that section of it. That they're just not equipped for that type of plowing. So we would have to take over the plowing on that aspect of it, and likely we would hire that out or contract that out to contractors, which we would then ask the business owners to offset some of that cost. If you remember last time when I showed you the stuff from Brainerd, where they've got the diagonal parking over there, that's similar to what they do. They contract that portion out, and then they have the abutting property owners assessed for a portion. They don't pay all of it, but they do pay a portion of it, and we would likely do the same thing in this situation.
So the bump outs, who takes care of that? Right now, it's the store owners taking care of the sidewalks in front of their place. But if you have a corner business, that means you got a lot of snow to remove.
That's true. That's true.
Well, the bump outs, I'm sure, would be contractors like the rest of it.
Probably,
We'd have to iron those details out. I'm not sure off the top of my head how that would go. If the contractors would take from here on out, and the sidewalk would just be the business owners, which is likely what we would do.
And bike path, who's a good bike path? That would be a city.
That would be the
Sure.
city as well, yeah.
You can require the business owner to shovel the bike path too,
Right.
which would be right off the sidewalk. So they're gonna shovel it from there to the bike path, from the sidewalk to the bike path, and there's kind of bike path up to the right of way, or main road.
So that's what I'm looking to do is get the business owners in, invite them in, and get their input on it.
when are you looking to do this?
I would like to do it kind of in conjunction with the next planning commission.
Have them come in that same night?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd probably just have it beforehand, just kind of as an open house forum type of deal,
Maybe start at 6 o'clock or
something like that, so that they can talk about this and have.
You'd have these in big blow-ups.
Yep, and these I probably wouldn't have, at the beginning of the meeting. I would ask them for their input first on what their problems are, and then say, for instance, option number 5 takes care of this, and this. Just
But
kind
it
of.
doesn't take care of this.
But it doesn't take
Yeah.
care of this. So I don't wanna give them this first, and then they'll think, well, you already decided on one or the other, which we haven't. Kind of see where their concerns lead us to in terms of the.
Maybe parking is as big of an issue as you think, or whatever, vice versa.
Exactly.
Has MinDOT given any indication about traffic volumes, projections? Their proposed work is simply to bring the existing road back up to some standard, I suspect.
Basically, their proposed work is to reconstruct the pedestrian ramps, the corners, so that they're ADA compliant. They would not, right now, they're not doing any sort of bump outs or anything like that. It's basically making the truncated domes to the right slope and everything. And then what they would do on the main line is mill out, I think it's probably 2 inches, and put 2
And then
inches back
overlay.
up.
But they haven't talked about traffic volumes.
No.
Is there any, there must be concern somewhere that 10 years from now, 15, 20, additional traffic volumes on 27. Obviously, we've seen over the years that the volume on 27
Yeah,
is increased.
Yeah, as part of their design, the way that they figure out how thick they should put that, how much they should mill out and how much they should put back in, they'll do a traffic projection. So they're gonna estimate 20 years out how much traffic they're gonna get on there, and that'll determine how thick they need to go.
Won't that also give us some idea about how many through lanes and turning lanes? Won't that have some correlation
It'll have
to
some
our
correlation,
decision?
Yes, yeah. And I would invite Jim Holgren to that next planning commission. Jim's with MinDOT, just so that he can at least hear our concerns and not necessarily, I wouldn't ask him to necessarily present anything as much as just listen to what the business owner's concerns are, what we're thinking of here. And then I can have a discussion with him and just see where he's thinking of going with this project.
Is there a possibility you can have the ballpark figures of what it would cost under each scenario to the business owners?
I think
and the
that's
community?
premature.
Premature?
Yeah.
That's gonna be their main thing. It's always bottom
Yeah, the
dollar.
bottom line is gonna be,
Well, I can tell you, the cheapest is gonna be leaving it the way it is right now.
or like option 5.
Or option 5.
Option 5 is minimal
It is
change.
minimal cost,
Yeah.
but you don't address any parking concerns or anything like that.
And we do have issues with people crossing, that's a lot wide.
It's a wide area, yep.
Okay, yeah,
Until we narrow it down, I even hate to try to guess what some of those costs.
yeah, you'd have to do a study.
So that's what we have for that one.
When is MnDOT considering the work on 27? 2 years, 3 years, 5? No particular,
5 years. Right now, it's tentatively 2019, but I mean, that could change
okay,
with budgets. So
could be
that's it.
2020.
Could be 2020.
Okay.
Just don't know.
Wasn't the bridge 2022 or 2021 or something like that?
Yeah, and again, that one's depending on
Right.
budgets as well, but yes, that's kind of where they've got it slated for right now.
Okay, let's move on. Next item of discussion, storage POD regulations.
Okay, as I said in the staff report there, we don't really have very clear guidance from the ordinance as it stands right now as to how we're supposed to regulate these. Are they structures, are they portable, something or other that aren't allowed at all? And I don't know if everybody's familiar with what I'm talking about, but these are kind of those things that you typically see on the back of trains. Steel shipping containers, very rectangular, coming on boats, overseas. They seem to be getting more popular with people either wanting to rent them or buy them and use them for storage. A lot of times when people are moving out of a house or into a house, they'll have them on site for a while to store their materials. I know last summer, I think it was, we had somebody who was moving out and wanted to move all their furniture and stuff out of the house. They didn't have somewhere to bring it to, they didn't purchase the house. So those kinds of situations, but what I've attached here is kind of a draft based on some other communities that have done this kind of thing to regulate those. And it's just for discussion purposes, kind of a conversation starter to see what you like or don't like about it, those kinds of things.
you're not considering these to be any type of permanent structure. They would, because I see you've got 180 to 365 day period.
Well, yeah, and that's part of the challenge, I think, with these is, you can make an argument, what's the difference between this and, say, a metal storage shed? Should we be treating it like a structure that as long as it meets building code and those kinds of things that are fine, and we just treat them like that? Or are they something that's temporary and different and should only be allowed for a limited period of time?
I think it's a pretty good stretch of the imagination to consider those the same as a metal storage shed.
Yeah, but at Camp Ripley, we use them for that all the time. They're considered, they're a storage shed, that's where our extra equipment goes, or extra pieces go.
But that's also designed to pick up and go.
Yeah.
I can put that on the train.
Yeah, actually, the ones we use aren't gonna move, but they were an additional way for storage of limited usage equipment, but I know where you're going with that, so then, do you side it, or, I mean?
Yeah, that is a military installation, and the overall look and. the
Yeah,
use
we're not
of-
worried about the aesthetics as
Very
much,
different.
yeah.
I see them in the rural areas.
Shilling farms.
I don't know if I want them all over
Well,
town.
the issue is they're cheap, because there's an excess of them out in the world.
But they're strong.
And they're strong, and they're finished.
And I think it's that affordability that makes them obviously appealing to people for storage purposes.
Yeah.
And so that's where I expect you would likely see more and more of this people wanting this. I had one person in another community ask if they could have one for up to 2 years on site. So we're trying to work through that with that community. But
I got myself a new two-story house, I started making a couple
Well, if you go on Pinterest or some places like that, they build houses out of these.
Yeah,
I mean, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. And some of them are actually very interesting. I mean, they're aesthetically pleasing and all that good stuff. They're modern, a little different style, but.
I've seen houses made out of silos.
Yeah, I guess if you go that extreme, yes. There again, if you put one of these in your yard and you sided it, and put a roof on it, it would look like a storage shed. I mean, it could.
Yeah.
I mean, there's possibilities, but do we wanna go into that? I mean, is that, they're big, they're, you know, most of them are 20 or 40 feet long.
Or
I
is it
think
less
like,
than those?
like Ben says, other cities are addressing this, maybe we should hear some of the issues and where they're going with it.
Yeah, and that's what this draft ordinance is based off of one community that I worked in, regulating them. So, but I mean, yeah, I can do some more research if you'd like and come up with some of the issues. I guess we've covered 80 to 90% of the issues in our discussion right now.
I think the big issue is aesthetics. They're sound, they serve the purpose, they're inexpensive, and we're all, plus
Very good points, yeah.
we just don't wanna look at them sitting all over town. So, I guess that's where the discussion's at. You still have to abide by every other regulation, you know, as far as distance from property lines and permeable water spaces and.
I mean, the biggest thing that I would have is that if we allow them, they would be placed on private property as opposed to public. You know, we don't want them sitting on the streets, damaging the blacktop, you know, on the sidewalk or something. They'd have to be placed within the private property area.
Over and all for movers or whatever, you give them 15 or 30 days. If there's somebody's moving, and if not, wherever you rent them from, they have storage, they can load with their stuff, store them there, when they get their house, they can move there. You know, I wanna say we abandon 100% from being anywhere in the city. You don't have to use it for storage, no different than a semi-trailer, you know, they pull that in front of their house, they just sit on the street for 2 weeks, they load their stuff in it, or bag it on their yard. But if somebody's thinking about permanent, I would think 30 days is well more than enough. I don't know.
I don't think 30 days is enough. Sometimes it takes a while to get it out there and get all your stuff in your other house or things arranged. Have you moved a lot?
I moved
It takes time, you know, maybe 45, 60 days. My opinion, I mean.
The other scenario to think of is if somebody's building a house, you know, they put some of their tools or whatever in that for storage because they don't want to leave it out when the framing's not up yet.
Secure reasons.
Secure reasons. It is 30 days enough, I don't know.
No, you don't get a house.
So we sure don't need 180 or 365, I can
Agreed,
guarantee you that.
agreed. I don't disagree
Yeah,
there.
there's somewhere in between
It's
is
somewhere in between.
You know, what does it take from the frame a house and secure a house, even on a new construction job? You day-to-day footage so they can have doors and stuff on and have it secured, it's usually 30 days. Takes more than that, time for them to get some help.
So maybe like a 45, 60 day.
For a contractor to use it for his
Oh,
storage.
oh,
or maybe do like a 30-day with the possibility of a 30-day extension or something like, I mean, something like that.
Do that, I'll just follow 60 days.
Yeah.
Well, if you're building
60
like
days
you said,
doesn't
down,
seem that
that's what I was gonna say,
unreasonable.
it's gonna take longer.
You know,
But you brought up an interesting point because somebody on the west side
I've
has one of
seen
these.
dumpsters sitting out there longer than that,
Yeah.
you know.
But you know those will eventually, a dumpster will eventually be moved.
You hope.
Sometimes these things fall into place and you hope they get moved, and the longer they sit there, the longer.
Less likely.
Yeah.
Less likely to get moved.
What were you saying about the one on the west side?
There was somebody on the west side had one of these. And they put it on the street, and then you brought up a good point, and they loaded it with their stuff. And it was there, I suppose it was there for probably a month, and then it disappeared. So they must have filled it up and then took it away.
But it has to do some damage to the street just
Yeah.
sitting there.
Yeah, it's
Or
got to
no,
be
when they unload it, when they load it, yeah.
tough on the tower.
Well, even a dumpster sitting on the street does damage. You pull
The
them
thing
out.
about a dumpster though, the back has two wheels that it
Yeah.
rolls up. It does some damage, no doubt, but the wheels help minimize that.
Yeah.
those storage ones do not.
They're just a big square steel
They're
box.
square steel box
Yeah.
that,
Well, the guy in town that moves them, he just jacks them up and puts an axle underneath the back, so he don't drag his at all, but I'm sure there is something to do.
Okay,
Never
I'll
ends.
bring some information back, just to take a look at it, how they handle it. And then we can decide what we're gonna recommend at that
You
point.
see in the commercial, obviously they're not real popular on here, but like the Pods Company, that would be kind of the same thing, wouldn't it?
true.
And they do them basically nationwide, so they must have some type of ordinances in place, especially in larger cities, to regulate these things.
Yeah, there's definitely,
But there again, I suppose they put them on their driveway, there's really nothing to say about it.
Right.
Yeah, it's, yeah, okay.
Well, let's move on to new